right. Well, today I have the honor of speaking with an extraordinary leader, entrepreneur, and mentor, Karen Grullon. She is the CEO and co-founder of Grullon, Orozco Associates, and GR Construction Group, where she helps businesses with tax preparation, bookkeeping, company formations, business certifications, and construction solutions. Karen's journey is one of resilience and determination. She immigrated to the US from Honduras at the age of 7, became a single mother at 23, and worked her way up while earning her education. A U.S. Army veteran, she served as a 92-8 automated logistical specialist before an injury led to an honorable discharge. With a strong background in accounting, human resources, and business development, Karen is also a certified QuickBooks ProAdvisor and a contractor for the state of New Jersey, assisting entrepreneurs with business compliance and certifications. She is deeply involved in mentoring Latina entrepreneurs, advocating for small businesses, and serving in leadership roles across multiple organizations, including the New Jersey Statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Women in Wireless Leadership. She is currently completing her undergraduate degree in accounting with a minor in legal studies, with plans to pursue an MBA in general studies. Karen's story is a testament to perseverance, faith, and the power of vision. And I'd like to add to that all of this she's accomplished with the highest honors. It's worthy of mentioning because highest honors are achieved by those who are willing to put in the extra work and to burn the midnight oil, as they say. And I'm so proud and I am so grateful to have her and to be able to hear from her and to learn about her journey and all of the different things that she has overcome that make her so magnificent, that make her so incredible for everyone to know her, for everyone to follow her work, and for people to learn from her as well. Join me as we dive into her journey of leadership, the leadership lessons, and the passions for empowering women and small businesses. Here tonight with us is our amazing Karen Grullon.
Hi, Dr. Lorena. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
My joy, totally my joy. So as we dive into our podcast today, one of the things that I kept thinking about was, wow, your journey is just incredible, right? Because you kind of have really honored that starting from the bottom, just overcoming so many different hurdles. And I really would hope that if you could share a little bit about your journey from immigrant, right, to the US as a child to becoming a CEO of your own company, how truly inspiring that is. And if you could share some pivotal moments that you had that probably shaped your path to leadership, because now you're in this position of leadership, but it wasn't always so.
I see my life like a soccer field. You get kicked in so many directions, but there's one goal, and it is to go to that, to the center and hit that goal, right? So I feel that coming to the US with a very strong cultural background like my parents had, and being in America, those two cultures just clashed, and I was in the middle of it, so I was literally that quote, ni de aquí ni de allá, because my parents installed in me the Honduran culture, while in school I was taught the American culture. It's speak up, you have a voice. In Honduras, you are told what to do, and you are to remain quiet. You don't have a voice. So that, learning to find my voice, learning to be strong and independent was extremely challenging because what I was taught at home was something totally different than what I was taught in school. However, you know, I'm grateful for the both because it kept me a happy balance. You know, even though I maintained my culture, I was still able to develop into that woman with a voice.
Mm, this is
Um,
also awesome. I love it.
so yes, you know, I handled many companies, multi-million dollar companies without a degree. It was my self-determination and the trust in my own self, you know, and
Mhm.
being able to figure things out on my own. And I always start, you know, I started from the front and I worked myself back. For example, you know, I looked at financial statements, and I was able to, when I never ever knew what a financial statement was, and I went to an interview and they asked me, "You know how to read financials?" And I said, "Yes, I do." I had no clue.
Mhm.
I had no clue, and I learned. I learned on my own. I'm self-taught. However, when in July of 2023, I was laid off, and I saw myself at home, and I said, "How do I reinvent myself? Do I go back
Mhm.
to corporate America? What do I do now?" And I said, "You know what? I'm going to take everything I have, and I'm just going to build from scratch my own company." And I did it. And it's a slow process. However, it's one that I'm enjoying. I'm building a legacy, you know, for myself, for my kids, for my friends, and everyone around me. And I think when you embrace the challenges as, how can I put it, as an opportunity, but not a challenge, but an opportunity to grow and excel, that to
Mhm.
me, if I would have seen this situation where, oh, I'm unemployed, what am I going to do now? You know? But instead, I took it and I flipped it the other way around. I said, this is a great opportunity for me to advance, for me to do something, you know, and let, you know, my next 30 years, you know, be one of achievement. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Uh,
Mhm. Oh my God, just your whole outlook is just inspiring. The outlook alone, not only the trajectory, right? Because you're talking about a situation where you are there looking and hustling basically, and you are saying it doesn't matter. I'm gonna learn it. I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna just go for it. And that takes a special kind of character because you are willing to go the extra mile. You are willing to go figure it out. And this mindset, I mean, you're saying embrace challenges, not as challenges, but as opportunity to advance. And I love this idea of like, if you stop thinking that this is a problem and instead think, hey, how can this make me advance and be better? Then you will more likely, one, jump into the challenge, and two, be able to actually come out better because now you're looking for the better. So I love your mindset. Your mindset is incredible. And now I see why that mindset has put you in the limelight. The minute I saw you, I thought it was just incredible, your whole energy, the way you are. I also enjoy very much how you kind of are so centered in your culture and how you realize, wait, I don't have to erase my culture. I could keep my culture. And you do something that I always talk about, this additive approach. When you add instead of subtract, instead of saying, no, I need to get rid of, you're like, no, I like my Honduran culture. And how about I kind of learn to manage the two and live with the two, the American culture, which is more forward, and my Honduran cultures, which is asking me to be more demure, and just managing these dynamics. I think it probably has now worked to your advantage.
it has. And I'll tell you why. I've learned to keep quiet in very strategic times. And if it's also taught me to speak up when I needed to defend myself. So, like I said, I embraced the both, and I've learned that, like I said, my culture is so rich. It's so much, the Honduran culture, but I've also learned to understand, right, my mom, to understand my dad, because it was so normal for them to be a machista and for my mom to be a marianista, So, and those two, believe it or not, complement each other, because la mujer marianista es una mujer que le dicen, stay shut, you're going to be home, you're going to be raising the kids, you're not going to be missing anything, because the man is the provider, the man is the one who brings the money, and you just need to be quiet. Then the man, when they see that, submissive woman, and that creates more of an ego, and he grows more of that machista. So being able to understand where they're coming from, it helped me identify that in my husband, because he is Dominican and I am from Honduras. So we were able to take the best of both and marry the two. And
This
that
is
has
awesome.
led me to a very, not a perfect marriage, because you don't have a perfect marriage, but it has led me to understand how to navigate, because this is a trajectory that you need to learn how to navigate to get to the end.
I love everything you're sharing, because in essence, what you're saying is how your culture and understanding the backdrop of that has actually enabled you to cultivate better relationships. And I guess by that token, one of the things that you're saying is that, it has served you in very strategic ways, right? Where you now can navigate even when you're dealing with other cultures that may have resemblance. And you're like, oh, I identify with this. I kind of have an inkling as to which way to go, and probably make less mistakes, or unnecessary blunders that could cost you. So I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, wow, this is really good. Such an edge, such an insight and understanding, because you've actually taken the time to fully understand your values, right, from a cultural standpoint, because this is why you can speak to this, and I love this, because whoever's listening can then maybe ask themselves, what are my cultural values, and how do my cultural values probably inform my behavior or the behaviors of those around me, or even the dynamics in relationships, such as what you've mentioned in your marriage. And I think this is really important, because many times we're showing up in different spaces without realizing the tools that we bring in, right? It's interesting because
it's also understanding the other side and understanding their
absolutely
culture, to be able to, once you know the other culture, you're able to adapt and to be able to know how to react, right? Because sometimes we react not knowing, and that's what leads us to get into problems.
Yes. And this is just such an insight. I really want our listeners to be able to take this as a wonderful opportunity, right, for their own reflection and growth, and realize, wait a minute, if I'm having these issues, and let's say I'm in a multiracial, multicultural marriage, these are things worth exploring. What skill set, what tools am I bringing from my upbringing that could potentially impact the way I interpret things, and also the space and the opportunities that we give ourselves to understand the other side. Because this is the beauty of what you're saying. I love this whole segue into just how your background has informed a lot of your practices, and being strategic, like you said, knowing how to keep quiet when when it was just like, wait, maybe right now is not a good moment to say anything because he's like right up here, and maybe the macho man needs me to be really quiet and sweet right now, right? Knowing how to do that, or knowing how to speak up to defend yourself. Hey, that was overboard. No, I'm not allowing this. And no. And so I think that this is, you have given such a wonderful opportunity, right, for our listeners to see, wow, this is powerful. This is powerful, and understand why, you have been able to also do all this, turn your setbacks into wins.
That's right. Let me tell you something. Many thought that everything that has happened in my life, or that has been setbacks, but I couldn't get to where I'm at if it wasn't for that stepping stone. For me, those were stepping stones. They were not setbacks at all, at all. Being laid off and not knowing what to do. You know what? I decided, let me go back to school. Let me start my own company. Let me learn. At 49 years old, I never thought I was going to be back in school, with 20-year-olds.
I just love it. I'm just like, you got me like hooked on, because you're like, hey, all of these stepping stones for your expansion, because basically that's what this is.
I'm building upon those challenges.
Yes. And you decided, I'm expanding my territory. I am not shrinking. And no, that was not a setbox. That was a wake-up call. Hello, you can do bigger, better, bolder, faster. Wake up. And you took that as like, are you there? Are you there? And you're realizing, wait, I haven't been with me. Let me be with me. And you decided to run not other people's programs, but your own. I love that. Like, you could have been more empowering. Whoever is listening, do you realize this? Hey, are you getting a crisis moment? Maybe it's a wake-up call. Maybe, like Kat and Grullon is telling you, that moment where you find yourself right now is a moment of reinvention, is a moment of rethinking, and it's your moment of expansion if you let it and if you choose it, right? This is what we're talking about in this interview. And I hope it's just as firing and powerful for others as it is for me. I don't know if people can tell my enthusiasm or not, but I'm hoping it's coming right through, because I cannot hide it. I am like, yes, this is it. You tell them. Thank you for this. Love it. Now, I'm thinking about your many hats, right? Because obviously you've gone from this whole process, right? But in that process of having to be the mom, having to be, the entrepreneur, having to be the CEO, the Army veteran, mentoring other women and other people who are trying to bring up their businesses, and now a student, like I'm listening to you loud and clear, but these are all different hats, different identities, if you will, for each one. And how do you balance like all these roles and basically, while you're still maintaining your leadership effectiveness in your business, for example, like how are you kind of juggling all this stuff?
For me, organization,
Mm.
the way I organize myself, my brain works, I'm telling you, in such a different way, because I'm an accountant. So I'm very analytical. I'm analyzing and organizing, strategizing while I sleep, believe it or not. I already know, at what time I'm going to get up, what time I'm getting dressed, how I'm going to drive to where I'm going, and what is the shortest, the shortcut to where I'm going. So organization is key. I cannot do the calendar on my phone. I have to have a paper planner. So I carry a planner with me. I'm very visual. I need to have everything in front of me, laid out in front of me. And when I went back to school, I said, I love to do things grand. I like to do things. I want to do the best at everything that I do. So when I went back to school, I said, I am going to make sure that I get all the honors that I can possibly get. And believe it or not, this week and last week, I started getting all these emails from the different organizations. And I'm counting, and each one gives you a card for graduation. I got magna cum laude, which is the second highest Latin honors. I have the beta gamma, which is the business honors. I got alpha sigma honors, which is the adult learning. I got the tri alpha, which is first gen graduate. And that for me is the closest to my heart, because my parents didn't have an education. My mom barely made high school, and she only made high school because she had to go work for her brothers and sisters. And when they came to this country, my mom was working in a factory. My dad was working in a gas station in East New York in the 80s. And my playground was the fire escape in Washington Heights, where my mom would set us outside in the little fire escape, and we couldn't go to the park because it was in the 80s. It was so dangerous. There were shootouts in front of the house, And I said, and I visualized myself, and I said, when I get out of here, I'm going to have a house with a big backyard. I visualized it, and I didn't leave it as a dream. I visualized it and I put it into action, because every single step led me there to where I'm at right now. And, and I have my house with the backyard, but that fire escape keeps me grounded. That fire escape, that vision of the fire escape with my sister playing in the fire escape keeps me grounded and keeps me humble. Never forget where I came from, where I had to go by. I waited for the other kids when we're going to school, for the other kids to leave the bodega, because I had those paper food stamps. And I needed to buy myself a juice, or the 50-cent juices and the 25-cent chips. So, having what I have now, people come to my house, and it's like, what I'm enjoying now is fruits of many years of intense labor. And it's just not physical labor, it's mental labor in every sense, because along the way, I've just not built myself, but I've built my kids. I built my marriage. I built my coworker. I always want to pour everything that I have in the season that I'm in. I want to pour everything. Like they say, la siembra y la cosecha. Yo siembro en otras personas porque me gusta ver cómo se desarrollan, how they develop, how Karen, how I can put Karen in them and how it flourishes them. So for me, it's not even what I can get out of a relationship with a coworker, with a friend. It's just, I love to see how they bloom, and yes.
Wow. All powerful stuff. What I'm understanding from all this is the value that you've had to had, and one, staying focused on knowing where you come from, so that kind of keeps you grounded and hungry for more, but at the same time with a sense of humbleness, knowing that you went through years of struggles in your upbringing, and that there were moments where you even probably felt shame and felt like you had to hide over circumstances, that you now can say are not your current circumstances, but that you work through that, and that you kind of had to give up so much just to do this. And in that process, I'm also understanding you had to acquire a real hard sense and knowing of, your time, like planning your time, having your visual representation of what you're doing, when and how. And if you want to create these big goals, how you were going to do them and mapping them out, how you had to keep everything organized, how you had to use your skill set and analyze your moves and be very strategic, and just all of these subset of skills that were born right there in that fire escape with these dreams. There you are having all these dreams, and it's almost like I'm hearing like the flower coming out of the concrete, right? Like it's like, look, in the whole muddy place, like in the whole muck, here I was, a kid that maybe shouldn't technically make it in terms of statistics. You're talking about I couldn't even go to a playground, for God's sake. But in you, there was that idea, I guess what we call the American dream, of having your home, of having this great space, of having all these magnificent experiences and adventures. And you made them real through a lot of hard work. And this is like a story of how I want people to also capture that they too may be right now and trapped in a small little space. Maybe they're living in a place that isn't what they envision for themselves. But with your own story, I hope the possibility gives birth in their mind and in their hearts to know, hey, you got to decide, you got to make a plan, you got to organize, you got to strategize. These are all the words you use. You got to visualize, you got to sit down, create a grand plan, but you got to put it into action. You said
And
all
that's
these
the key
key
word.
words.
Action for me is it's everything. You know, you can have a plan, but if you don't develop that plan and you put it into action, nothing's going to come out. So for me, it's all about the moves you're making. If you just sit there and expect it to come to you, it's never going to come to fruition. So for me, it's all about always being, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, for me, people take a nap during the day. For me, napping is a waste of time. You know, I have so much to do, so much that I want to accomplish. And there's another key word for me, and it's legacy. You know, I want to make sure that if you think about this, your kids know who you are, but your grandkids, they are going to know who you are too. But your great grandkids might hear about you, but not really know you. And then your great great grandkids might not even hear about you. But when you leave yourself well rooted in each one by the legacy that you're leaving, your name is going to go on for generations. And that's one thing that I know for sure, is that my name will live through generations, through my generations.
I love it. My goodness, you took this to another level. Whoa. I don't know if you're listening, okay? This is important, and I hope you really capture this. Legacy. How are you going to stay relevant for generations to come? How are you going to impact your family members for years and generations to come? The legacy is not about building this grand thing outside. It's about this thing within your own family. And how can you pour into others and in your family so that they can also grow and they can see what you've built? Wow, this is incredible. It's a huge undertaking, but doable if you create your plan and take the action to build that. If this is a thought, I hope it motivates our listeners to think about, what is the legacy that they wish to leave behind? Like, this is a great food for thought.
Yes, if you start thinking about it, when somebody, for example, passes away, how long after do they start forgetting who they were? A month, 2 months? I don't want my name to stop there. I want my name to continue. And I'll give you a perfect example. At William Patterson University, I held the first Hispanic Heritage Month gala at the university ever. We bought dignitaries, you know, and I was reprimanded because they said, they thought I was bluffing when I told them that I was going to do a gala. And I bought dignitaries, I bought councilmen, you name it. It was a beautiful, beautiful gala that really celebrated who we are as Latinos. But we embrace other cultures as well, because we had students, you know, Palestinians, we had African Americans celebrating our culture. Do you know what that was? I was just ecstatic. And this is something that's gonna live on, because this is a tradition that we're starting. Now I'm part of the Hispanic Heritage Month committee, because now we're gonna celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, not just one single celebration, but we're gonna have every week, we're gonna have a different activity to celebrate Hispanic heritage.
Wow, this is incredible and life-changing. Now, why were you reprimanded? What was
Because
reprimandable about this action?
So when you bring dignitaries into the school, you're supposed to let the higher ups know. And I did let them know, but they thought I was bluffing. You know, they thought I was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
They thought you were just saying, oh, I'm gonna toss a name and see if it sticks, kind of thing. That's interesting, right?
Now they know that when I say I'm gonna do something,
right,
you know, I'm gonna do it. So
yeah, but I think it also speaks to an an unexplored bias, right? The bias that maybe you weren't going to be able to pull that off. The bias that who could you possibly be and who could you possibly know? And why would you be the one to bring that to happen and to pass in that school? The bias that you couldn't and shouldn't be able to do it.
correct. And I did it.
And so it speaks of them, and they ought to basically apologize. Hopefully they send you a letter of apology, not just a reprimand. And if not, whoever hears it, if you hear it, I said that. Don't go around looking for Karen Grullon and tell her all kinds of things. If you feel like you have a grievance over me saying that maybe you should all apologize to the woman here, you can send it to me. All right, because I'm the one that's saying the same way you go out of your way to reprimand and stop the one that is doing the work. And when they do actually, in fact, do the work, then maybe you should send a congratulatory letter for their file at the same time and mend your ways. That's me, Lori Let Moreno, saying that, right? I want it to be clear. Do not go around pursuing Karen here, all right? Okay. Go ahead. So
I want you to know, Dr. Lori, that you know, one of the things that, you know, you came into my life in such a crucial time. And I remember watching you, and, you know, this was after COVID. And the way you expressed yourself, I was just like, oh my God, Dr. Lori Len, a Latina, you know? I was, yes, and then I saw you up on the stage, and it was crazy because when we left, I remember telling my friend Betty, you know what, Betty? We got to visualize ourselves that next year we're going to be in that panel. She looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, I ain't crazy, Betty. We're going to do it. And she's my witness, you know. But it was through inspirational women like you know, and the other women that was in that stage that gave me that, even though I was strong, and even though I thought that I had reached a place in my life where I'm a go-getter, I'm a hustler, you guys gave me that extra, you know, to go that extra little mile. And I thought I don't think I would have ever pursued my career, because I was thinking, you know, at this age, why go to school? But when I saw Dr. Lorilen, when I saw Dr. Karen, and I was just like, I want that, you know? But it was like a want in such a special way that I felt like you guys were covering me, you know, by your actions. So at that time, I knew how important it was for me to speak up and for me to be that Dr. Lorilet to this other woman coming behind me.
Yes, and we got to speak a little bit after the event. And I think that the biggest factor in this whole thing is love.
Yeah.
This concept of love. And as much as people, want to dismiss that simple word, that's such a powerful force. This is the difference, right? When you are able to become a catalyst and you're able to fuel and you're able to wake up in another, that sense of want that is stemming from love, of knowing and honoring their more, which is exactly why when I got to speak to you, I wanted to honor your more. It was clear to me, it was visible to me. I didn't need to know you for many years to understand the field of energy that I would enter as I approach you. And I wanted to uplift that, and I wanted that to become so visible to you. And I think it's important because whoever's listening to this can get from this how important it is for us to honor each other when we see greatness, as opposed to be angry or as opposed to be upset, as opposed to hide the other person. No. Bring them up. Bring them up. Show them up. And this is exactly why I do these interviews. It is my goal to bring you up because I so much appreciate the work that you do, the human being that you are, your qualities, your dedication, your lens, the way you are just doing the work. And this is part of how we as a community also can uplift each other, right? We have to start creating this network of support for one another, because this is in essence the American dream, the honorability of the work behind all of those sleepless nights, behind all of that tireless working, behind all of that dedication that consumes you. And I want that to hit home, because none of us are talking about making this easy. This is not a walk in the park. You've given up a lot. You've dedicated yourself to be able to get these changes in your life.
I always say that people have a saying that, oh, I've already walked down that path, you're gonna bump into the same rock that I bumped into. No, it's not about them skipping that. It's about training them how to overcome it, right? So they can learn from it. It's not about giving them the easy way. No, it's about teaching them so they can learn and they can embrace that moment, on how I was able to succeed, right?
Yes.
And let that not be a failure. So, I see also as we build this community that we're in now, where we are trying to help one another. So one is up here, the other one is holding my hand, I'm holding the other one. And it's about, just bringing them up one at a time. One at a time. And if we start doing that, bringing each other up one at a time, trust me, there will be less women down there.
Yes. And this is the work. This is the work that we're inviting others to join us in doing. Wherever they are, if they cannot join our specific endeavors, people can do where they are. And in the end, we'll meet each other there. Because it's a force that creates that space. And in doing the work, we become really good at doing it, but we also develop skills, we develop a path, and we create the change. It's this collective effort. So thank you for saying that. Bringing that kind of light to this idea of how we support one another. And now I'm thinking of you, like, in terms of your business aspect, because there are all these aspects about your person that are, I guess they're unique, in a combination as a one person. I'm sure you face some challenges related to being a business leader. Okay, now that you kind of step out of like working for other people and you're like, oh, I'm going to do it for myself, right? It's kind of like becoming this illustration. Like, how have you overcome maybe challenges that you may have had as an entrepreneur, in this new endeavor? Because you formed Go Associates and GR Construction Group. These two are different companies. So I'm sure there have been challenges at some point in time. And maybe you can speak a little bit about, like some of that little bit of that piece of the journey that also has its messy little spots.
I think that as a Latina, as a woman, and as a business owner, you have it 3 times as hard, right? But I've used that to my benefit. I think I call myself the networking queen because I network. And that is key, is building relationships, right? On a different level, because it's about, when you're an entrepreneur, it's about who it's about where you've been, right? And it's like a tapestry. You start weaving, right? One person leads you to another one, they lead you to another one, and before you know it, you have built yourself a tapestry. And that's what has helped me, get to where I'm at right now with my company. My goal is by the end of the year, this should be a 7-figure company. And everything that I have envisioned, Dr. Lorena, we're going to have another podcast next year. And I will be able to bring you my financial statements and tell you, remember, Dr. Lorena?
I love it. I love it. I'm all for it. And you so are well deserving of that, because you have all those unique skill sets. And not only that, all of the grinding to this moment in time when you decided to honor your unique skill sets and your abilities and decided to pour and work in your own endeavors is exactly the fertilizer that makes this grow. The same way you made other people grow and have their money and have all their stuff. The difference now, it's your own garden, and you are building and putting and creating, and this is just the beauty of it, to know that.
It's funny because I started learning about the different certifications that on a state level and on a federal level. The first ones that I knew was the veteran ones, because I'm a veteran, and I certified my company as veteran-owned company. But then there was also the small business enterprise, the women-owned company, and the minority. And then I went ahead and I certified my company in all those. Then I went a little further and I started investigating into government contracting, which I think like Latinos feel like that's unreachable, right? For some reason, I don't know. And every single business owner that I come across, they tell me, oh, no, that's so complicated for me. It is not complicated. It's about learning the process. And once you learn the process, it's just reciprocating. learning how the government worked. And then from that, when I started learning about the many different opportunities that the government has, specifically in construction, I was like, wait a minute, you know, why am I going to stay here? I can be the middleman between the government and another company, because if I have all the certifications, I can go after the contracts and then pass it on to a subcontractor. Why not? So I'm doing a construction cohort, and I'm getting certified in construction and getting my OSHA certification as well. So it just doesn't stop at I'm going to get and I'm going to do a construction company. No, I'm learning everything that has to do with construction, because there is another big market, you know, out there. So I think it's also, I love to, how do you say that? I love to dissect everything and put it back together. And when I started, you know, doing business consulting, and I started dissecting all these different companies, I started seeing where they have the little, you know, the little missing pieces. And that's how they're letting the cash go. For me, once, you know, seeing all these companies that they have the experience in the construction industry, and they're getting, you know, these little contracts, home improvement contracts, when they can be doing, you know, business with the government.
Yes, yes. And I mean, this is where your unique set of skills can be such a plus for any small business out there that has, let's say, a construction company. And now you can be not only a supportive person in their own process, right? Because you can now, but also be able to also support them by giving them subcontracting opportunities. So you become a person that can be that one-stop place where they can come to you, hey, Karen, I'm a small company and I want to grow and have bigger contract stake. Would you support me in building this, that, or the other? And then you can have very strategic conversations about how you can support them on this multi-tier level. And it's a win-win, whether you are supporting them in getting all those certifications, or whether you're supporting them by giving them contracting, or both, right? It becomes a win-win for everyone, because there isn't a loss. It's not like there's a loss. There's still tons of people to help. And I love this mentality.
But you know, the networking comes to play in here, because I can also provide those networking resources that I have at insurance companies. Now I connect, you know, I become that bridge for them. Because some of them might lose contracts because they don't have the proper insurance, because they think it's you know, they're not going to be able to obtain it. And we come to see, we work it out, and it's not even that expensive, you know. And because of that, you missed out on contracts.
Right.
So I'm able.
Yeah, no, but I'm listening to what you're saying. Go ahead. Yes.
So I'm able to, you know, like I said, I dissect the company and see where they have those little gaps. Then I put it back together and say, this is the best, you know, this is the best approach to be able to get to the next step.
I see how all of your also training plays a part in this process, right? Because when you think about this from a process point of view, I can see how having this logistical mindset and approach to doing the work allows you to be very methodical, right? And strategic about what that almost like assessment, in-depth assessment is in the journey that that particular company may be in, or the trajectory they've had, or the projections of where they wish to go. And I think that this is really wonderful when you have this insight, right? Because now you can identify where in that process, right? If we go into the process-based thinking and being logistical, where you can then say, well, this is a better path forward, and these are the actions that we need to take, and this is where I can support you, and these are the things that we need to coordinate. So it's almost like being this central processing hub where they come to you and you can be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I think that that's very beneficial. So any company that wishes to have that, they can certainly reach out to you for that type of work. Now, where would they reach out to you for that? Just because I want to make sure that people who are listening, aren't be like, wait, but where could I find her for this, right? Because we will still go over it again towards the end, but I want to make sure, because, sometimes people are in a rush and they might just kind of catch us here. And can you share a little bit of how people connect with you regarding these kinds of things that we just kind of talked about?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. So for LinkedIn is the best way to have your professional connections. I also have a TikTok page, believe it or not. I don't know why. For some reason, the construction industry, it has been such a boom. TikTok has been such a boom for them. So I am on TikTok, and I'm also on Instagram. If you can look me up under go.associates, that's the handle for both Instagram and TikTok.
Yes, that's awesome, because, I know that there are probably some key people who be like, wait, I kind of want to talk to her. Like, I need to talk to her. And that's fine, because that's the goal, that if people find that they identify themselves with this conversation, that they can actually reach out for support and get to know the whole many, my God, you have a suite of services that you provide that once they kind of go and check you out, they can realize, wait a minute, where I'm just starting out from zero, right? Like, they could be from idea to all the way people who are already in business. And I want that to be clear. I don't want people to be like, well, I don't have a multi-million-dollar business, I can't reach out. That's not what we're saying here. We're talking about, you could just have the idea and you maybe don't even know how to get up and running. And so Karen would be able to help you with these kinds of things. And I think that you're in better hands by just reaching out to her directly than trying to figure it out yourself. And then you have a big mess going on everywhere you go. So save yourself a headache and instead contact someone with really good experience, someone who gets it done, and someone who can support you and educate you along the way. And make sure that you're covered where you need to be covered. And thank you for sharing all that. I mean, I was enlightened myself, and even though I'm not in any of those industries, I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting.
And I also train people to do the same thing I'm doing. I love to replicate myself. And I feel that even if I get somebody with the same business next door to me, it doesn't matter. My clients will be my clients. Your clients will be your clients. I feel that there is no competition. I don't see anyone as competition. I see them as potential, So that mentality for me has been able to help me grow. When you have a competition mentality, you're always going to be worried about how to get ahead instead of how to walk together, because two minds put together are better than one. And, I have someone who I share my whole price sheet with them, and I'm like, here, copy and paste it into your, into your letterhead. Use it by all means, let me know how it goes. But I am planning to have my business and be like, put it in a box and be a business out of a box, where you have everything you need in that box to start and do exactly what I'm doing from start to finish.
Yes. And I love that you're sharing that, because that's exactly my mindset, which is why I do these interviews. I think that what I have to offer is very unique to me, my life experiences, my own understanding, and my own interpretation of that as I put it forward in the world, which is why I also don't go around competing with people. I don't have time for that. I have a lot of hurdles that I have to get on in terms of my own belief systems and things that I feel I'm behind. So that is enough for me I have my own list of things that I gotta catch up to. that I should be worrying about anybody else. And I love that you are sharing this mindset, because it also plants the opportunity for people to go for their possibility, right? And the truth of the matter is, if the person is not interested in getting it done, they won't get it done, even if you give them, right? You could show them where the river is, you could show them what the water is, and if they're not interested in drinking the water, they won't drink it. So this is why every mind is like a world of its own. And this is why we should not go around being afraid of whatever anybody else is doing out there, because how everybody does their thing is unique to their own person. You know, you're going to retrofit it to who you are and what works best for you. And I love that you're so open about this, you know, so that people don't come and feel afraid. They could approach you. Don't be afraid. She's open. She is ready to support businesses. And if you are in that kind of questioning phase, you know, you could just have a strategy session with her and just kind of go over, like, what are the potential ways that you can create a wonderful business with her? And she'll show you what are your logical options based on your unique set of skills. And I can hear that she would be able to then say, well, this is a good path forward, and give you almost like a great plan, and you just got to implement this plan. So don't make it hard on yourself, make it easy. And you contact her and she'll support you with that. This is not difficult. Right here, I offer content for people to not spin their wheels and go nutty. Simple is best. Life is very short, so we're going to keep it like that. Now, Karen specializes also in business compliance and financial literacy, right? Which is part of what you do when you are doing these assessments.
Yes.
Right? You're kind of seeing, hey, is this like in line? Where are you? And like, what about your financials? Do you have all these things in place, right? From the business end. Now, when you think about women, right, and small business owners, which is one of those areas that I feel often women don't get like that level of support, but you as a woman, right, kind of have disrupted this. So what advice would you give other women, right, who are entrepreneurs and maybe having some issues, I guess, like navigating business compliance and having financial literacy? Like, what are some nuggets, like a key thing that you'd be like, hey, this would be great for you to do if you're like...
Yeah, so what I have noticed is that I had a few people come to me and said, I need to do my taxes, and they bring their bank statements. I said, oh, okay, I need access to your books. If not, give me, a profit and loss balance sheet. And they're like, what? They don't know what that is. So knowing how your business is running is key. And you are not going to know how your business is running without the proper accounting skills. And you just need basic skills, because if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, you already have that in you. It's just a matter of, tweaking it just to the point, not to the point of an accountant level, but to the point to see if your business is prospering or not. Because you see at the end that perhaps you did a profit, but maybe in some projects you lost money, but you can't even tell because you don't have the proper accounting system. And it just doesn't work where you bring me your bank statements and I'm able to do, that would mean that I would have to do all that accounting for the 12 months. And then, they tell me, I don't want to pay taxes. I want to show a loss. It doesn't work like that. It is what it is. If you made a profit, you made a profit. Pay the government what they owe, and that will help you grow. People think that by paying taxes and you were profitable, you're going to lose. No, you grow because you have potentials to do business with larger companies. When you're able to show a company that you've been maintaining yourself on a growth trajectory for the past 3 years, that company will definitely not even think it twice to do business with you.
Yes, I love this. So you're kind of saying, hey, if you are this business person afraid of taxes and growing, don't be that person, because you want to also be able to climb up this ladder of success so that other bigger contracts and bigger things come your way, and you position yourself in a very stable way. So this idea of not paying taxes is not really the best strategy in the long run. When you're running a business, you actually want to be able to pay taxes and feel good about your tax payments,
Correct.
because it signals that you have a strong company. And after all, that's what you want, because that's how you're going to get better loans, better services, better contracts, better everything, right? And I love that you, again, that's one of those things, you flip something and you took that and you're like, let's reframe this thought. So for all those women out there that think like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to grow. No, the key to growing is to actually pay all that and do all these things that you need to do to be profitable. I love that. Now, can you share maybe one very difficult business decision that you had to make in that process of growth, right? Like as you're thinking about, leadership skills that you've had to employ, such as making a tough decision, and maybe, how you navigated that to be able to then position yourself for a better win, right? Because sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and it's like, if you're at a moment in life and you're like, I had to make that decision, otherwise wasn't going to grow. Things were going to go sour.
I think that, I had to make the choice of whether I went back to school full time, I did this full time, or I went back to corporate America, because at the stage that I'm at, do I want to pursue this entrepreneurship journey, and for me, I made the best decision, thank God, which was continuing my education, not even though it was going to affect me, financially, because when you're an entrepreneur, you don't know where your next dollar is coming from, right? Unless you already have a set income coming in, right? So
trusting the process, trusting yourself. For me, it's not hard, but I think for someone else, it might be. Am I gonna make it? Am I gonna have sufficient money to cover my expenses?
Mm-hmm.
Believe in yourself, and the product that you're giving. I'm sorry, I'm just plugging my.
It's okay.
When you know what you're giving the client and the services that you're providing, it's natural for us to feel that ¿cómo se dice? That fear, the fear of failure, right?
Yes.
It's natural. However, when you open your mind, your soul, your views, your ears, and you say, I am going to inhale everything positive that I've ever done. I'm going to inhale all the positiveness and visualize myself in success as a successful company. Trust me that it changes. And the fear, when you start replacing fear with, I am going to do it, affirmation is key. And I learned that by myself. I am a woman of faith. And that for me has been what has kept me going.
Mm. I love what you shared, because actually what you're doing is you're programming your mind in a very magnetized way by anchoring and using your five senses and the language that you're mapping into it to achieve. This is something that, of course, me being a person who is constantly looking at how language impacts our actions, our behaviors, and the outcomes that we get. That's one of the things that I spend a lot of personal time learning. I clearly understand the power of this process that you're describing. And hopefully our listeners are able to kind of get to this process that you so beautifully described, as to how that serves as a not only a point of creation, but also a point of overcoming that sense of paralyzing fear. To know that once you take in your own evidence of positive success and achievement, and you're able to have evidence that includes in your five senses, you're able to then create. And I think that this is the best way I can summarize what you said, because people sometimes think that is this, oh, I just say it and I just say it. It's not, I just say it, I just say it. You have to technically embody this and be able to understand it as real and as so. Is that an imaginary thing? And how do you do it is by tapping into what you already know has been a success in your life. So it's not a fake it till you make it. It's a embodiment of that which you know you're capable of. And you know, I think that when we do our Inspírame Latina, I can kind of delve into it more. I guess this is more like a little preview. You know, hopefully it won't spoil everything for everybody. But the point is, this is powerful stuff. If you kind of start training, literally, your mind to do this. And what she's given here is you know, like people call it the secret. It's not a secret. You know, if you read the Bible talks about this stuff too. So it's not a secret, although it's kind of like a secret, because guess what? They have us hearing all kinds of nonsense as opposed to this kind of stuff. So we're saying stop making it a secret and spread seeds of goodness and positivity so that you can reap those.
You know that the way I see it is that you say who you want to be, right? It's not about faking it till you make it. It's about saying and put it into existence. And that's how you start building action. When you start saying who you see yourself to be. And something I learned many years ago, you know, I came out of the hood, and coming out of the hood, you speak, you know, differently. Your tone is different. And I had to learn. And someone pulled me into her office 26 years ago. And she said, Karen, when you speak fluently. And don't say yeah, say yes. You know? And you know, that stood with me forever. And that day, I started changing the way I spoke. I started using less hand gestures. I started speaking more fluently, slower, and I started listening to respond, you know, not listening to just splurge out whatever came out of my mouth. So the power of your voice is very important. The tone, what you say, how you say it changes everything.
Yes, it's so huge. So
and
huge.
If you sprinkle a little bit of sweetness into it, it gets even better, because you can be dealing with a negative person, but when you sprinkle that little bit of sweetness into it and you put it into the mix, it changes the whole conversation. And it doesn't matter, I can guarantee you, it doesn't matter how elevated the person is, it will bring and set the tone to a different, and changes the atmosphere.
Yes. Yes. And everything you're saying, I'm just really hoping, that touches people's hearts, because you're going into these deep places, that like many people don't necessarily go there, they just kind of go, oh yeah, the affirmation, but no, there's more to this affirmation business stuff. And you're basically kind of giving them a pathway to see themselves, to be present in that affirmation process and that moment of just creating their identity, not about the circumstances that they may be in. Because it's like what you said, you were coming from all these difficult situations financially, from living in neighborhoods that weren't the safest, but yet you had this foundation of love, and inside of you, you knew that there was even more out there, and that there was something that you can strive for. And this is an important piece, so that people connect to the fact that you may not be in the most favorable moment, but yet with your mind, you can still have these beautiful thoughts, and you can have these sweet words that can help you elevate that. And what I'm hearing from you is kind of like change the vibration up to this place of creativity and love, possibility, where you see and you hear amazing claims about yourself. And if you don't have it.
Yeah, it's about the law of attraction. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. Someone wanted my services, and they wanted, a secretary, they wanted bookkeeping services, and we provide all that, right? But that comes at a cost. It comes at a cost of 30 years of experience. It comes at a cost of a bachelor's degree. It comes at a cost of a paralegal degree, years of service. So when they took the price and they said, this is too much. I can't afford this. And I looked at the person, and I told them, no problem. I totally understand. You cannot afford my services. Let me just review what is going on with your company. Go to someone else. Tell them to also do a review of your company and compare the two analysis. And then you come back to me. He's now a client.
Right. Because again, it has to do with the insight that because of the knowledge base, because of the different angles that inform your understanding. It's the same thing when someone has all these years of knowledge and experiences and schooling and doing and all that. You're not paying the person because it was an hour or 30 minutes. It's because what they know. But it's not something you get in 30 minutes. You know what I mean? It's that insight. Yeah. What you can do is informed by all of that you cannot get in a second.
But what I wanted to tell you with this is the way that, approaching the situation, a difficult client, a client that might not see the value in your services. So it's learning the culture. And we go back to this, they themselves don't see the value that you have because they don't know who you are. That's why if I would have been another person, I would have said, okay, good, and then I just lost the client, right? Mm-hmm. But instead, I, very calmly, I told them, let me analyze your business and let me see what's going on. And then you can go to someone else and see if they give you the same information, the same feedback. So it's the way you approach and how you approach the situation. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect. I'm a human. And there is times where you just want to I want to just be back in Washington Heights and just scream. Back in the 80s, because Washington Heights is not what it was before. it's beautiful now. I mean, yeah.
I get it, but I think that that's also a nugget, just understanding the culture, right, of wherever you are working with and whoever you're working with. But also, I think that sense of self-knowledge, right, having your own awareness of what you can and cannot do, your limitations, but also your skill set, so that you can, one, have self-esteem, a sense of self-value and your own worth, and so that you don't have to feel that you can't command a price for something that you are very well equipped to charge a price for. So it's a combination of both, also giving that sense of freedom to the person who can potentially not afford you, and that's okay. You can't make them see a value in you unless you kind of give them the opportunity to see a different side of the fence somewhere else and realize, oh my God, this grass here is really dry and not green. Let me go back over there. And so sometimes you have to let people have that moment of appreciation by themselves where they can compare. And you don't feel bad about that. You stood your ground on who you were.
And and it's about, this is where both sides of both the Honduran culture and the American culture come together, and they marry each other, because the patient, calm demeanor of what I was taught to be, right? You need to be calm and accepting. However, I did speak up, but in a more how can I say it, in a more informative way. So I was able to inform the client of my services, of my experience, so he can gain the knowledge of who I was. And not be that submissive woman that I was taught to be. Stay quiet and, just don't say a word, or just be complaciente. O sea, how can I say it? Take what you get.
Just settle.
If you just want, you settle for whatever he wants to pay you. No, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
Right.
Yes. And this is key. Once you have something of value, you know who you are, you know your own values, you know your own skill set. It's kind of like you're like, nope, you got to work with yourself, understanding your self-worth, so that you don't have other people basically saying, no, you're not gonna get paid this. I love it.
It's like $100 bill. You can take $100 bill, and you can take a $1 bill. They're both a bill.
Yes.
Right? But they have different values.
Yes.
You can use that $1 bill to purchase $100 perfume.
Yes. Come on. I love it. This was such a great analogy, and let's let people kind of digest that one, right? Because then they kind of can start thinking, ooh, value. That idea of value, the idea of value. This was really good. Let me ask you something. Now that you mentioned this, I'm like, many women, especially women, this idea of imposter syndrome. Okay. Many women in leadership roles, may have to deal with this, or at some form or another. But have you ever faced some self-doubt, or like this idea of imposter syndrome, and how do you push through it whenever that comes? Because I'm sure, like, at some moment it may have happened, or it may happen even now. But how do you push through it?
The way I see it is, I'd rather be hated for who I am.
Oof.
You know what I mean? Than loved by who I am not. Because I am who I am. And I learned that I used to walk into a room and they would ask me, what's your name and what's your nationality? And I would say Karen Grullon. and I'm Honduran. And I would try to switch my accent. And I learned that I love my accent. And now when someone asks me, where are you from and what's your nationality? Now they're on a bind because when they try to pronounce my name, I say, my name is Karen Grullon and I'm from Honduras. And they, Karen, you mean Karen? I said, no, Karen Grullon. So now they're trying to, they're trying to say my name the correct way. So I feel that, yes, there is that imposter syndrome going around, but I've just been I'm telling you, I feel like this tronco, tree trunk, that I'm so well rooted that there is no force in this world other than God that can remove me from my roots. No force. And that's who my character is. That's who I am. And that's who I'm going to be.
Wow. This was really powerful. This was really powerful because what you did was you stood solidly, right, on your identity. And, for those who are listening to us and maybe wondering, about their own identity, I think the first thing would be to really come to terms with what that identity is going to be for the listener, because that's what's going to allow them to then find this strength. You know how you mentioned this
how you
tree
find
trunk, how you find that strength, right?
Is loving yourself, number one. Number two, there's going to be things about yourself that you might not necessarily like, but you can change, and you got to do it for the right reasons. You got to do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it for somebody else because that person is not going to grow from your change. You got to grow from that change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was priceless because others won't grow from your change. You got to grow from your change. Yes.
And this brings me into, again, I was faced in corporate America and being both the controller and also being in HR administrator. They always say you cannot mix your faith with business. Right? But how do you change a person, right? And how do you tell the person that you worship the most highest God up there is through him living in me and my actions being what gives you that conviction of who lives in me? I don't have to tell you and I don't have to say a word because you see that. So you're going to come to me and ask me, I'm sorry, are you Christian? Yes, I am. You want to learn more about me? It's not by imposing myself in a person. And that's where the change and the click came. If someone asks me, it's different than if I'm imposing myself on the person.
Yes. I love everything because what you're saying is let your demeanor speak of who you are, who lives in you in terms of your principles and what your aim is and why a light is with you. So that they wonder, why do you shine this way? What is it about you that's unique? And then you can say, well, this is part of my lifestyle. This is my belief system. This is how I kind of approach things. I think this is important because it's one of those things that informs your practices, right? And I think that, you shared with me that one of your quotes is Jeremiah 29:11, right? And this quote exactly reads, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And I guess if people think of that and think of how that can guide your practices, where you approach others with the same desire to help others grow, which is why you would share your business in a box and be like, here, and plans to prosper so that you can prosper too, because hey, I'm prospering my own and I want you to prosper too.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, I'm not interested in harming you. There's no competition. I compete with myself. Thank you. And to give you hope. Hey, if you've been stuck for a while, here, you don't have to be stuck anymore. And the future, if you thought it couldn't be done, here's a way and a path forward. And I can see how you can fulfill that, right, as a guiding principle for who you are, which is one of the reasons why I got attracted to your presence, right? The minute I met you was like instant. There was like an instant connection. And part of that root is that source of love and energy and kindness, and just identifying that frequency. That's a frequency that shows up in our behavior, in our approach, in how we appreciate the presence before us of a person, and we can elevate them and appreciate them for who they are. You need not to know everything about their lives to do that. And this is why I could embrace you immediately. I didn't need to know your past, your present, your future, and your whole life at the moment, because I knew the frequency that was before me. And I understood that I recognized, because I have my own relationship with this creator. And so it is. This is what it is. There's a constant way of that manifestation. There's no confusion about this presence. And I think it was good that you brought this. We're almost at a close with our interview, which, to be honest with you, I can ask you another 10 or 20, but it would not be fair to do that because, then it'll feel like a grilling session. But you've been such a great interviewee person here that I really want to make sure people kind of take the most that they can. You've accomplished so much already, and what's yet to come is breathtaking because of all these wonderful plans, as we have already established, are before us. Now, when you think about this exciting future ahead, because we should look at it with excitement at the ability to know that our plans will prosper and that a future and hope can be created through all of this wonderful endeavor of hard work, dedication, and action taking that you are doing. What's one leadership lesson that you wish you had learned, like earlier in your journey, that you were like, wow, if only I would have, or, and not as a form of regret, but more as a hindsight, kind of knowing, oh my goodness, kind of thing.
When someone hurts you personally or professionally, don't take the hurt personal. Take it as who you don't want to be and what you don't want to do. Take it as an experience and not as a hurt, if it makes sense. Because when you are meant to go through that, and you are meant to see that of the version you don't want to be. So you'll stop and think twice before being that person and repeating what was done to you.
This is powerful. if only I can kind of delve into it, because sometimes people don't always necessarily connect to ideas. So this is why I always kind of like to do these little summaries, because perspective taking is often supported by our lived experiences and also our abilities in understanding the breadth of the language and meaning behind it. So if I'm understanding, part of what you're saying to the listener here is, hey, a leadership lesson that really makes me a better leader today is all those sour experiences that I've had with people that were probably demeaning, horrific, and terrible at their leadership, very destructive to my own personal being, but I didn't let the experience destroy me while they thought they were at it.
Mm-hmm.
I heard and I listened and I experienced it, and I took that hurt where I was put down, where I was discredited, where I was told I was less than and didn't belong or was not accepted or supported. And I took that hurt and I turned that into the purpose of understanding how I would never want to be, and made sure that was a reference point of what not to do. And now you're here telling our listeners to remember that they might have been now through a journey and a path of a lot of pain and maybe destructive, not constructive criticism, and instead find a way to mend yourself and not keep the hurt, but keep the up leveling that it commands of you, so that you decide for your life, not those words of hurt and pain that were meant to destroy you. And you go ahead and command your life from an informed understanding that you will not let that hurt define you, nor let that hurt create a destruction for you on the path to your greatness.
They were not meant to destroy you. They were meant to build you.
You'd be surprised, because some people keep the hurt. This is where the destruction happens. So your invitation is a valid one. And I'm hoping that people take that invitation, so they take that path of edifying themselves, of knowing it's an experience in the journey, that you're going to have a whole bunch of people that are going to discredit you and say no to you. But that's not the point. The point is for us to up level. And I think this is key. Now, the last thing that I want us to do is maybe you can give some words of wisdom for people, remind them of where to reach out to you, where to follow you, and all that great stuff.
Stay true to yourself, your essence is what no one can touch. Your essence is yours, and for you to build, not for anyone to come, take, destroy, or construct. It's you, the one who has the power to build yourself with what has been thrown at you. And everyone experiences some type or some level of difficulty in life, because if not everything, would be perfect, right? And it would be a perfect world. And even those who have money might not have the happiness that you have, So life is just a balancing, and I love the weights. I have a thing with weights, because it's about putting a little bit of this, but balancing it with a little bit of this. And it's, love, comprehension, faith, essence. You balance all those ingredients, and you build you construct your own cake. You put the ingredients you want in it, and depending on what ingredients you put in it, it's what's the outcome you're gonna have. Either you're gonna have a cake that didn't bake properly because you forgot a few ingredients, or you're gonna have a close to perfection cake because you put all the necessary ingredients on it and you waited you know, if you didn't have what was needed, but you built on it and you waited to have all those ingredients before putting that cake together. Because if Karen would have been completed 20 years ago, if I thought I was completed 20 years ago, I would have been a complete failure. You know, Karen, it is who she is now because I waited to put all those ingredients together and make that, you know, and make that cake at the end. I'm a professional baker, and that's why I put the ingredients with the
I
cake.
love it. I love it. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Karen, for this amazing time, for sharing your insights and for your depth. I am so honored to just know you, to be able to share you with everyone I know. I am proud of everything that you've worked through, and I am so grateful that our paths have met. And I'm hoping that the future continues to bless us in many more gatherings and many more creations and in many more honoring of our Creator. I hope that whoever is listening reaches out to you as well, that your business continues to grow, and that others who come to you also continue to grow and evolve. I grow and I learn from you. Tonight has been an exciting and a wonderful learning for me, and a confirmation of more and more of who you are and the blessing that you are to me. So thank you for giving us of your time today.
No, thank you for the opportunity, you know, for all your listeners. And I hope that, you know, I serve as inspiration. And if anyone wants to reach out, even if it's just for a word of advice, you know, hope, please do so.
Thank you.